funny to think that my favorite part on all my bikes is the one where with the flick of my thumb, can jam my nutsack right up my ass. Hey folks, we're back again with another video, and this is part of our new bike build series, and today we are going to be installing a Oneup V3 Dropper post and an Ibis Ripley V4S frame. This is not a hard job. If you've never owned a dropper post before, for starters, I'm going to say that dropper posts, in my opinion, are one of the most, if not the most significant component that get released in the mountain bike world in the last 10 plus, maybe 15 years. I cannot recommend them enough. If you've been riding with rigid posts, seat posts for all your life or for the longest time or just recently since you got into biking, I strongly recommend looking into getting one of these things. Now, the beauty about this day and age is that in the last 5+ years, they've been way more reliable than they've ever been before. They've been way more affordable than they've ever been before. And you could buy some really great posts in the used market and save yourself some big money. Ultimately, as long as this stanchion over here is in good condition and doesn't have any major chips, there's really not all that much that could go wrong on the inside. And for most posts, those little parts can be changed out. So if you could find one of these in the used market, but it doesn't have to be a Oneup, many different types, I would absolutely consider it. You will only benefit yourself. The job is easy. We don't need any special tools. Now, one thing you will need to know to a certain extent is your preferred height from the pedals to the seat post rails when you ride a bike. Ultimately, the best way to find that out, in my opinion, is with a rigid dropper post, but you don't have to. What you can do is be a little bit generous when it comes to cable cutting on this guy to give yourself options just in case you find that, oh, you know what, I needed to go a little bit higher. I misjudged my cut over there. We will get into that later, all right? So let's get into the tools and parts needed for this job. There's not many tools needed for the job. For starters, in my case, I'm going to need a 5mm Allen for my seat collar. Yours could be a 4mm Allen, right? So it's either going to be a 4 or 5. Those are the two most popular. I'm going to need a 4mm Allen for the adapters. In my case, for a Shimano iSpec EV to connect the bolts, right? Those are 4mm Allens. Now, for this particular remote, I'm going to need a Oneup V3 remote. I'm going to need a 3mm Allen in order so I could tighten the cable, the shifter cable that actually, well, actuates the dropper. Now, measuring tape is going to come in handy so we can measure cable that we need to cut. Black tape or any kind of tape so you can mark your dropper as far as how much of the dropper needs to go inside the post, and as opposed to, you know, how much of it's going to stick outside the post, so that comes in handy. A cable cutter so we can cut the cable housings and the shifter cable inside. Pick is optional. This is when you cut the cable housing so you could open up the hole in case you might have crushed it during the cut, right? Where you can make it nice and open for the shifter cable to go easily through. And this is an optional tool. This is a park tool, crimping tool. This is one of the few park tools that I do really like. It's super handy, man, when it comes to crimping, especially for dropper post remotes, all right? And that's pretty much it. If there's anything else that I'm missing, we'll go over it when, while we go through this video, all right? Let's get into the parts needed. When it comes to parts for a dropper post installation, it could get a little bit tricky for people that have never dealt with a dropper post before, because not all posts come with all the parts to install them on a bike frame. For instance, this is a Oneup post. When you buy a Oneup post, you're going to get the dropper post and this bag over here, which has some pins for height adjustment, grease, and a cable barrel end. That's it. You have to go out there then and figure out what remote you want. And, well, sometimes a remote will come with cabling, or you're going to have to go get cabling. In my case, I got the Oneup V3 remote, which I happen to like, and it came with the cable housing and the shifter cable on the inside. All right, so again, it's very dependent. Many options out there for remotes. Personally, I like the ones that have bearings that actuate them. I think they're more smooth, but again, it's your choice as far as what you would like. When it comes to installing a remote, this is also your choice. Now, remotes could be installed directly to the handlebar with a clamp, or like in my case, I have a iSpec EV, Shimano iSpec EV brake, and I want to mount the remote straight to that brake handle. So I had to get an adapter for an iSpec EV brake mount, essentially, right? And that's how I'm gonna mount the remote. It's gonna be mounted straight to the brake handle as opposed to mounting it straight to the bar handle, the handlebar. When it comes to grease, this is very important now. two types of grease options here, in my opinion: carbon paste and anti-seize. Now, at a minimum, anti-seize should be used in just about every single scenario. Metal on metal, metal on carbon. There's this misconception out there that carbon paste should always be used on carbon. Not really, guys. Carbon paste is meant for situations where you do not have good tolerance after, and this is key, you've torqued down whatever's mounting and holding on to your component. So for instance, we have a seat post. We want to put it into a seat tube. The seat tube has a seat collar. If I install the post in the seat tube and then I torque down that collar to the appropriate torque spec, and you never want to over torque a collar, especially on a carbon frame, and over time my seat tube slips, well, that's telling me that I don't have proper tolerances or tight enough tolerances to install the post into that seat tube without carbon paste. In other words, using just regular grease. If you're able to install a seat tube into a post and you already have good friction going in there, and then you're able to tie down or torque down that seat collar and you get zero slippage, anti-seize is more than enough. Carbon paste has a sand type product in it which occupies that additional space for tolerances that aren't tight enough to allow you to install it just using grease on its own. So again, you do not need carbon paste for a carbon frame in every situation. You need it in situations where, definitely need it in situations where tolerances aren't tight enough. All right, let's get into installing a seat post. So the first thing we need to figure out is how much of the seat post will stick out of the frame. To figure this number out though, you're gonna have to have a good idea as far as what your preferred height is when sitting on the bike. Preferred height from the top of the pedal to your seat, okay? If you haven't figured that number out yet, you are going to have to put some time in there to try and figure that one out. What height is the most comfortable for you when regularly riding that has the least impact on your knees and the rest of your body, okay? So for me, the way I usually measure my seat posts or my heights is from the top of the pedal to the seat rail. Now, consistently across all my bikes, I'm at around that 88.5 centimeter mark. Again, from the top of the pedal to the seat rail, and that includes shoes. Always include your riding shoes when taking that height measurement, okay? So that tells me that all I need to measure, since I know that height, is for now, the top of the pedal to the top of the seat collar. So if I take my measuring tape and I put it at the top of the pedal, and then I bring the pedal to the lowest point. In order to find the lowest point, just swing it back and forth and you'll see your tape go up and down. Once it goes to that lowest point right there, I'm at 59 centimeters. So that's at the top of my pedal to the top of the seat collar. Now, 59 centimeters. My preference is 88.5 centimeters. So I'm going to bring it up to 89 because this is a brand new bike. It's a full suspension bike. I'm not 100% sure if it'll be like my other bikes where I'm around that 88.5. I'd rather give myself a little bit of extra room. So I'm going to take it to 90 for now, right? Ultimately, that's 30 millimeter difference. So I know that I'm going to have 30 millimeters sticking out from my seat rail holder over here to, well, the top of my seat collar. So hopefully that's straight and clear. Next, we're going to install the remote onto the brake lever. So this is a Shimano 9100. It has an iSpec EV. For the iSpec EV, I need an iSpec EV adapter, which I ordered. We have to install that adapter into the lever itself. So first thing I need to do is disconnect the lever. Now, I can do it easily. Great. I can do it easily by just sliding it out. I don't have a grip, but if you have a grip and you need to install an EV, basically what you need to do is fully unscrew the screw in order to open up the clamp. You can't open up the clamp as is. You are going to need a pick. If you look at the back side over here, hopefully you can see that well. There's an arrow and there's a metal pin. Just push in the pin. Great, now the thread is stuck. Push in the pin and it will open it up. All right, just like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the adapter mount and we're going to put it in this slotted area here. Now this is directional. We want it to point this way, right? So we want the long part facing the back of the bike and the tubular part or cylindrical part facing the front of the bike, just like that. Okay, that's how we're going to put it on. Now we're going to put it back onto the handlebar. Grab my 4mm. So now we have that one on, right? So it's flopping around. Next, we put on the adapter. Now, with the EV adapter kit, you're going to get 2 screws. This is the short screw with the wide washer. That wide washer goes inside this recessed area over here. It's a seat for the washer. Now, the way this works is it's this way. So basically, we are, see if you can see it better like this. So this part here, this cylinder part or 2 part is going to go inside this part here, and then the screw fits underneath. Should be able to get it by hand. And there we go. Now I can tighten it down with the 4mm. All right, well, let's not over tighten it. Okay, that controls our direction. So now we have the remote and we have the screw, the longer screw, right? So the longer screw goes on top this way, just like that. And then the remote, we have 3 holes. We get to pick whatever hole feels the most comfortable for us. For now, I'm just going to pick the outside hole. Actually, you know what? I'm going to pick this hole here and bring this the furthest outside because that will be longer. That will result in a longer cable just in case. So screw this in. And it'll fit into a slot as you saw over there. And we are done for now. Our iSpec adapter is fully connected. Now let's work on the cable. Next, we're going to pass our cable housing through. So it's a brand new cable housing. With the Oneup cable housing, it comes with the ferrule on the end. We need to remove the ferrules, right? This might be a little bit stiff as you can't see. Come on, that's 1 and that's 2. Don't lose them. We're going to need them. Boy, man, it's on there real stiff. There we go. And that's 2. Just put them on the side. Now, the dropper remote is over here. We're going to wrap around the front of the bike and go first into this hole here, okay? So I'm going to take the cable and I'm just going to route it right through. Now, as I route it through, you should see the cable housing come out the other side at the bottom of the bottom tube. So Ibis makes it simple. They have tubes basically that connect the holes within the frame. So when you pass a cable housing in one hole, it'll come out the opposite side easily. Other frames are hollow inside. The frames are hollow and you have to fish out the hoses. It could be a bit of a challenge. On some frames, it could be a very big challenge. There's ways to simplify that. I'm not going to get into that in this video. It's going to take too long, right? So for now, I have an option. I could take out more of this cable housing now and then try and fish it into the next hole to bring it up the seat tube, or I could directly go in, which is the better option. It just gives me an easier way to guide it, right? So we're going to take it, we're going to put it through, and now we should see the cable come out of the top of the seat tube. What I will do actually is I'm going to clip a little bit of the top of the cable housing using cable cutters just to get a nice clean cut. All right. Then when I cut it, I'm going to take my pick, I'm going to put it in the hole to make sure I have a nice clean entry for the shifter cable to come in and out, right? So I don't know if you can see that. I'm just putting it in the hole and making the hole a little bit wider, making sure it's nice and round. Okay. And then I'm going to take one of the ferrules that we took out and I'm going to put it back on there. I'm going to make sure it's on there real good. Make sure you put it all the way in, all right? Okay, so this side is done. So now we have to figure out how much cable we want to keep or how much cable we need to cut. There's two ways to do this. You have the quicker way and you have the safer way. In this video, I'm only going to go over the safer way. It's a little bit longer, not much, but it's ultimately safer, especially if you've never done this before. The quicker way saves you a step, but honestly, one wrong calculation and, well, I mean, you could end up a little bit too short, and I would rather not take that chance. So we're only going to do the safer way for now, all right? So let's get started on that. So the first thing we want to do is mark the post as far as how much of the post will go inside the frame. So we determined that 30 centimeters will stick outside and 18 centimeters will go inside the frame, right? So I put a piece of black tape over here, and the bottom is 18 centimeters that will go in. So what we're going to do next is, here's our actuator. The housing for the cable goes in that hole. So we're going to take the housing, we're going to put it in the hole, okay? And now we're going to feed that cable down, and just make sure that the cable's always attached for now, all the way until we hit that tape mark. Okay, just slowly take your time, and we just hit it right there. Now what I'm going to do is take a 5mm Allen and tighten the seat collar a little bit. We don't have to do it over tight because we got to remove this thing. Now we're going to double check to make sure. Grab our measuring tape. We should have 30 centimeters sticking outside. So we are good, right? I mean, I should be pretty much dead on. There we go. 30 centimeters. Perfect. So now we go to the front of the bike. Now at the front of the bike, we have all the rest of the exposed cable. So what we want to do is take the cable, just like we did with our brakes in the previous video, is wrap the handlebar just past the top tube, right? And then pull on the cable until, you know, you're snug enough where you're not bound on anything, but you have enough room to freely have the handlebar turn just past the top tube, okay? And then we're going to measure to the end of the barrel over here and put a mark on it. So right now that looks good to me. That gives me enough play, and I won't have all that much cable sticking out. If I look at over here, it's pretty much even with my brake cables, right? So that is my cutting point right there. So I'm going to take my cutters and chop that guy. Take my pick. Make sure that hole is nice and open. All right. And then we're going to take our second ferrule. We're going to put it in all the way, make sure it's in all the way. All right. Now, the reason this is a little bit slower than the other way is because now we have to go back and remove the post in order to put in the shifter cable. Whereas the faster way sort of kills two birds with one stone. Since we already know the measurements, we could just measure with whatever remaining cable and add the additional measurement of the seat tube that goes in, and then we could just cut it and then together put the seat post with the shifter cable in the tube one shot, right? But really it doesn't save you all that much time, and reality is this way is much safer than the other way for somebody who's never done this before, all right? So next what we're going to do is we are going to remove the seat tube again. Let me loosen the seat collar. So pull the cable at the bottom basically, or push the cable at the bottom to help the seat tube come up, right? Because we want the cable to come out with it, the cable housing. And there's the cable housing, all right? Now, one thing I noticed on this one is that when I put the cable, well, let me pull this back down because it's pretty important actually. In this frame, if you notice, I could put in that seat post very, very easily, okay? I mean, very, very easily. So on this frame, this is a perfect example on when I would use carbon paste. To give you an idea, I could wobble just like this. I could feel it wobbling inside. So this is not a tight fit inside this seat tube for this particular seat post, or at least for this size seat post. So this is a perfect example of when to use carbon paste. If, for instance, I had to put pressure on it, because some seat tubes are made very tight inside. I mean, real tight tolerance. They put pressure as you put the seat tube inside. At that point, you do not need carbon paste. You could just go with anti-seize, right? So on this post, without a doubt, I am going to use carbon paste, no questions asked. So anyway, I pulled it out, right? Let's pull the cable back out for now. So next what we're going to do is grab our shifter cable. And our shifter cable came with a cable barrel. So if you notice on one side of the cable, we have a cable end. It's like a barrel, and they give us another barrel. And if you notice, this barrel has a large hole and a small hole, all right? So the way this works is we're going to go to the other side. We're going to put the cable into the large hole first. Then we're going to bring it all the way down. And it's going to fit inside the barrel that they provided us, right? So now we're going to take that barrel. We're going to activate our actuator just like that. Okay, we're going to put the barrel on the inside. And we are done. Hopefully you can see that good. All right. So now I'm going to put a little bit of paste on my dropper tube over here. We don't have to go crazy with the paste, right? That is way more than enough. In fact, that might be a little bit too much. And we're going to take it, we're going to spread it everywhere around the post. Again, if that paste has basically like sand bits inside it, right? Just cover the whole post just like that. You don't need to cover this part because that's not going to touch anything. Anything underneath the tape. All right, just like that. And now we're going to put the post back in the bike. To put the post back in the bike, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the cable end and we're going to put it inside the top of the ferrule. And we're going to feed the cable all the way through until it comes out the other side. Okay. I don't have a camera on the other side, but you should get the idea. Now this obviously did not fall correctly. There we go. I don't know why it's doing that. Let's feed it all the way down. That was acting a little bit weird. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take the ferrule, we're going to put it back into the actuator. Okay, now we're going to feed the whole post into the frame. All right. Until we get to our tape. Oops, I just passed our tape a little bit. So now we're right at the tape. Tighten down the seat post. Now let's go to the front of the bike. So now we're at the front of the bike and I sort of got the camera angled underneath the brake lever, right? So we could see the remote in order to finish up the remote section. For starters, what we're going to do is we're going to take the barrel and we're going to turn it while we're facing the outside of the, or when we're facing the barrel this way, we're going to turn it clockwise. Okay, make sure it's all the way at the end clockwise. So turn it towards the front, like the front wheel basically, or the front of the bike. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take the cable and we're going to feed it into the barrel. Could you see this good? Hopefully you can. We're going to take it, we're going to feed it in the barrel. Now on this side you have a screw. That's a 3mm Allen. You're going to need a 3mm Allen, right? So we're going to feed the cable through until it comes out at this side of the screw over here, where the screw is, I should say. Now we want the cable to be on top of this washer because that washer is what's going to hold the cable. So we're going to pull it by hand all the way until the cable ferrule is inside the barrel. Then we're going to hold this cable here, give it some good tension. Make sure that the remote does not actuate. Make sure the remote is fully open. Make sure it's not, closed in any single which way or form or closing, right? So what we're going to do now is take our 3mm and we're going to tighten down onto the cable in order to hold the cable in place. So before I cut the cable for good, let's test the remote. So I'm going to press it in, push down. Oh yeah, that's working. There we go. I press it again and it comes up. So we know our remote is all set. Now again, back at the front of the bike, what we can do is try and stretch the cable. Okay, so if you notice now, I got a lot of play. Well, that means that I need to take my 3mm, loosen the cable, counterclockwise. Okay, and then I'm going to pull it again. Again, we don't have to over pull it, but give it a good pull and then tighten it back up again. And then what we can do is actuate it again to see if we can loosen it up anymore. All right, see that? Now I get very little play. In fact, I really don't even need to do it. The barrel will take care of it, but since I'm picky, let's unscrew it one more time, counterclockwise. I'm going to pull it one more time, just like that. and tighten it down clockwise. And now I have basically zero play, which I prefer. I don't like any play on my cable whatsoever, right? So now what we can do is, if you notice, hopefully you can see that well, over here there's a groove. This groove is to tuck the cable in after we cut it. We tuck the cable, we put a cable end on it, crimp it, and then we tuck it in here, all right? So this is a little bit tricky. Before you do this, make sure, if you're not 100% sure in your cable, leave yourself some extra room for now and then cut it later, right? But I feel more than confident, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the cable, I'm gonna cut it right there. Okay, just like that. Now this is one time where I really love this Park Tools cable crimping tool. I take the cable end, I put it on the tool, take the tool, actually the camera's in the way, completely in the way. Put the cable end on the tool, crush it, and I am done. And then I could take this and I could tuck it right inside just like that, and it is out of my way. And there you have it, folks. You just finished fully installing a dropper post in your frame. So like I said, this is not a hard job. You can absolutely do this job. The most important detail that you absolutely need to know is your preferred height for your seat from the top of your pedals. That is an absolute must. You need to figure that one out. The rest of the job is just literally nothing more than installing a cable, cutting a cable to length, and making the connections on each side, all right? So I did not mention torque specs on the levers because I still have a lot of adjusting to do in the front end of this bike, but ultimately for the screws, I would not go above 4.5 Newton meters. Technically, with all handlebar levers, they recommend 5 Newton meters. I'm a big fan of getting closer to 4 Newton meters, only because if I take a wipeout, I would rather have a lever move out of position as opposed to a lever snapping off, which I've had, especially with a dropper lever. I've had a dropper lever completely snap off on a wipeout in the past. So again, that's just a personal preference. So I wouldn't go above 4.5. I'd probably stay closer to 4. That's more than enough grip for your average handlebar. So this job that you saw over here pertains to most dropper posts. Some dropper posts are connected a little bit differently at the actuator side, but that would be a whole separate video for those dropper posts, okay? So with that being said, if you found this video helpful and you liked it, please click that like button, click that subscribe button to see more videos, click that bell button, what ding, in order to get notified when new videos get released, and more videos like this are coming. So until then, I hope all's well with all of you, and we will be talking to you soon. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.